Please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting, November the 1st, 2022. Is there any changes to the agenda? I have none. How about you, Dr. Rose?
I do.
Okay. If we move on, meet with department heads and elected officials. Terry Johnson, county auditor.
Good morning. 1 week from today is big day, so. I sent election news update to all the media to remind them that we will be open Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for absentee voting. And that everybody needs to get, if they had a ballot mailed to them, make sure they get it dropped in the mail pretty soon. And because we have to receive that on election day. And so far, we have had 3,422 ballot requests, and we have received 2,853 of those. So getting a pretty good turn back in, so
Good.
that's it.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Colin Durst, IT.
Just keeping busy like always, but nothing new to report.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Trent Hecklebeck, attorney's office.
Sure. Linda just came down from upstairs. Lisa's got a trial. I've got some stuff off for her. Everything else went pretty smooth. Like we said about the West Burlington shooting, that was a heavy lift, and we didn't get it. But without the witnesses and the victim being willing to testify, it's tough. Yeah. But other than that, nothing really out of the ordinary.
Okay. Thanks, Trent. Rodney Bleeker, maintenance.
Good morning. We're just staying busy. We've got a bid opening this afternoon with the jail projects, 2 o'clock, so other than that, nothing new to report.
Okay. Jared Lassiter, Southeast Iowa Regional Planning.
Land use has been pretty normal, nothing really out of the ordinary. We're moving forward on some of the ordinance updates. We got planning for the start the public hearings for that airport ordinance amendment in a couple of weeks, and then around that same time we'll be ready to have our next work session on wind and solar with our initial draft of those, which I'm working in the process of finalizing right now. So apart from that, we got a subdivision up for review, probably going to be on the agenda next week, and that's really all I have.
Okay, thanks, Jared. Janelle, how's the treasurer's office?
Good morning. We've been busy. We will be printing about 1,300 delinquent notices that will go out today. But it's business as usual.
Thank you. Krista Miller, Public Health.
Good morning. We've also been keeping busy. I want to remind everybody we still have the flu vaccine and as well as the bivalent and the primary dose for the COVID vaccines, and we're giving those no appointment necessary, 8:30 to 4 on Thursdays. Walk-ins are welcome.
Okay, thank you. Natalie Sefner, Recorder's Office.
Good morning. Just a reminder that all highway vehicles and snowmobiles do expire December 31st. So you can come into the office and renew those, or you can now renew online. Otherwise, just business as usual.
Okay, thank you. First Lady, Conservation.
Good morning. Crews are out. We're starting the park closing process now. So we've shut the water off of the 4th Mowing Station and down at Wealth Recreation area. We will leave Big Hollow open until we get a sustained freeze, and we're worried about hydrants freezing up because we do still have campers in there. But otherwise, we're starting to transition into winter mode.
Thank you. Brian Carter, Secondary Roads.
Good morning. Probably still a big topic, the 99 project's still going. Flags were supposed to come down yesterday and that got delayed, so hopefully they'll come down today. Well, I don't think as they sit here I can guarantee it, but they should be down soon. I think that'll please everybody that has to go through there. So dirt contractor is not done, but is definitely on the back side of things. Has some rock to haul and a little bit more dirt work to do. And the bridge contractor is at least talking about getting things ramped up here over the next couple of weeks, so we'll see if that actually happens or not. Obviously, the bridge work will happen while the road is 2 lanes, so I think the big topic is just people looking forward to not having to sit for those lights anymore. Can't blame them for that, so. We did extend a job offer for our motor grader position. It was accepted, so at some point I'll run a personnel action through the board for that. Good to get that position filled. We're advertising for another opening. I think that closes the week after Veterans Day, I believe, for that position, so we'll see where that goes. And then we have a bid out for the Bridgeport project. Take bids on that later this week, so other than that, trying to use the warm weather and moisture and blading and getting stuff done.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Angie Vaughn, safety.
Good morning. Just keeping busy, but nothing new to report.
Okay, thank you. Ken Heinlein, Sewer Agent, Mental Health.
Yeah, good morning. One thing I might mention is that we did an RFP, the SEAL region has led an RFP for the ACT treatment. ACT is an evidence-based service delivery model with the primary goal of recovery through community treatment and rehabilitation. It serves individuals with the most challenging and persistent problems. Priorities given to people with schizophrenia, other psychotic disorders, and bipolar disorder. So the program provides psychiatric services, case management, support counseling and psychotherapy, housing support, substance abuse treatment, employment support, and rehabilitative services. 24-hour crisis supports included. So we got this RFP out, and you know, some of the psychiatrists that come from the Johnson County area have said for years, oh, I wish you had an ACT team like what Johnson County has. And so we're trying to get one, and we'll see if what responses we get. But it's just come out.
It's been a downfall in this area for some time.
Mental health's a big issue, and anything we can do to improve services, we're certainly trying. This is something that the state requires ACT teams now, and so we're doing our best to try and find a provider to do that service.
We appreciate that, Ken. Thank you.
An ACT team has to have a psychiatrist on staff, right?
Yeah, they have a psychiatrist, an ACT leader, and a psychiatrist, psychiatric nurses, employment specialists, substance abuse specialists, certified peer specialists, program assistant, additional mental health professionals if needed. So that's the things that are listed in the ACT team, so pretty comprehensive. Goes out to the person. You know, a lot of times we have outpatient services that people can go to. We have police officers responding to people in crisis, but this is a mental health professional going out to people and trying to provide some extra level of service. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Doug, how's the jail population?
Good morning. Yeah, everything's doing good at the jail. We're finally at full staff, so that's gonna relieve some overtime there on our correctional officers. We have 97 total right now. 24 of those are being housed out of county. Six or seven are waiting to go to a treatment facility. It's just whenever beds are available, we can take them to like ADS or Salvation Army in Davenport. And 8 are waiting to get into the residential facility, and that waits anywhere from a couple weeks to 6 months, so it's just random on that. So other than that, our populations went down a little bit, but hopefully we can get some of the people into the treatment programs and the residential facility to help drop that 24 number that's being housed out of county. The Sheriff's Department is conducting civil service interviews yet today, later on this afternoon. They have 7 candidates. They're pretty excited about that there's seven good ones there. And also they participated in a safe trick or treat last night. It was a success. We bagged up a lot of candy and handed it out. Other than that, nothing new to report.
Them 14, them 8 and 6, them are belong to the state, but we're still paying housing out of the county for them, right?
Eight of those belong to the state.
Eight of
The
them belong to the
ones,
state?
the ones that go to the
Yeah.
residential facility would belong to the state. The treatment ones would be ours, yeah.
Still
Yes,
think
yes,
the
all of them are ours,
state ought to
but-
reimburse us for them times when they do that, but
Yeah, we will not get reimbursed for
No.
those 8 either.
it costs you people out there for what the state's not doing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Moving on to correspondence. I'll tell you, we got a lot of correspondence from several people, and it has to do with why you people are here. So we'll cover them during the work session, and there's too many of them to read in the correspondence, unless you want to stay here until about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Probably deal with it during public input, I think that's
Yeah.
probably what they're here for.
But we'll have 2 minutes for each one of you if you want to have something to say here, public input then. Okay. Moving on to discussion and vote. We have payroll claim reimbursements in the amount of $1,157.42.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker, Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have account payable claims in the amount of $488,244.28.
Motion to approve. Second.
Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay. We have a resolution supporting Resolution 2022-071, supporting the Operation Green Lights for Veterans. I shall read this to you. Whereas the residents of Des Moines County have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for all of the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who serve in the armed forces have been a vital maintaining the freedom of ways of life enjoyed by our citizens, and whereas Des Moines County seeks to honor these individuals who have paid the high price for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, veterans of foreign wars, religious groups, civil service, and functioning as county veteran service officers in 29 states to help follow former service members access more than $52 billion in federal health, disability, and compensation benefits each year. Whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and whereas an estimated 20% increase in service members will transition to a civilian life in the near future, and whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transitions from military to civilian life, and whereas active military service members transitioning from military services are at a high risk of suicide during their first year after military service, and whereas the National Association of Counties encourages all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize the Operation Green Light for the veterans, and whereas the Des Moines County appreciates the sacrifice of the United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted, therefore be it resolved with the designation as a Green Light for Veterans County, Des Moines County hereby declares from October through Veterans Day, November the 11th, 2022, the time to salute and honor the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform transferring from active service. Therefore, be it further resolved that in observance of Operation Green Light, Des Moines County encourages its citizens in patriotic tradition to recognize the importance of honoring all those who made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom and displaying a green light in a window of their place of business.
Motion to approve.
Second. Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes, please.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. And for those of you in the crowd that's been in the service military, thank you for your service. Okay, we have an agreement with the CMBA architect on the new public health building.
This is just the final product of the, we've all seen along the various stages of development, so this is just the final product as you guys have seen.
It says this project includes spaces for offices, clinic, testing, education, fitness, storage, and drive-through capability for vaccine distribution and testing.
Motion to approve
Second.
the agreement.
Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay, we have personnel action. We have one for DESCOM. It's for Lance Dumblazer, telecommunication. Last day of work is 10/26/22. And final rate of pay was $21.01 an hour.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. And we have two for the correctional center. We have Cassandra Bellamp, dietary manager, anniversary, 6-month step increase from $39,300.65 a year to the new rate of $41,484.01 a year. We've got one more for the correctional center. We'll do both these at the same time. This is for James Pleasant. James Pleasant,
James Pleasant.
okay. It's an anniversary, 12-month step increase, and he's a full-time correctional officer. Previous rate was $42,429.10 a year. The new rate is $43,501.25 per year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Both of them?
Yep.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have reports to the jail stat for September of 2022. This report will be in the auditor's office to view at your own discretion. Do we have any other business?
Minutes.
Oh, minutes, we do have minutes, don't we? What do I do with them? Okay. We have the minutes from the regular meeting on October 25th, 2022.
Motion to approve minutes?
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now, is there any other business?
I have none.
I have none either. Future agenda items?
I think we've touched on that with the work sessions. We've got a work session on solar and wind coming up and
In the airport?
the airport.
Hearings?
Yeah.
Committee reports?
I had none this week.
I attended the Southeast Iowa Regional Planning meeting and up the thing reported out of that, or funding, I talked to part about it, that STG transportation funding. They pushed the date back. I think Jared sent an email out.
Yeah,
to us.
just the end of the month, because in practice, we don't score those until February anyway, and it's, sometimes it's a challenge for communities getting it together in the around holidays, so.
Which is a good thing. Okay, public input. Anybody from public that's online has anything, they can call 319-753-8203 extension 4 or email board@dmcounty.com. We'll give you 2 minutes to do so. And anybody in the audience have anything to say, we'll give each one of you 2 minutes to speak what you want to talk about. Yes.
John Archer, 210 Edgewater Beach Road. Of course, all you guys got our emails from the meeting that we had with Chris last week. I think you guys agree that moving forward to putting campsites on FEMA properties isn't in anybody's favor, okay? That's the impression I got from you guys. We can rehash this, but you've read all the emails and all, you saw the big turnout, the support that we have against this. Nobody wants campers and problems in their side yard, okay? We don't either, okay? We support Chris wholeheartedly in his effort to provide funds to the department, okay? But we're willing to do our part, you know, as a community, to fundraise where we need to. We're also asking for your support in helping him do, what he does is a wonderful thing, okay, for the community, okay? And we just all need to support him. So I didn't know if you guys wanted to vote on this or how you approach it.
We can't vote on it today, we'll have to put it on the agenda.
Okay, so that would be next week or?
Well, I'm not sure, probably looking a couple weeks down the road, we got a lot of stuff we gotta go over first.
Okay.
We have budget meetings coming up here, starting kickoff November the 15th. We have the budget kickoff out at Stars Cave, and then we'll get some more numbers and everything together. So it's gonna be a while. It might be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but it just takes time.
Are you taking into consideration about maybe providing some more funding for the Conservation Department?
We'll have to see how that goes, for sure.
Is there something we can do on our end to put that in his favor?
Well, I think it's gonna be on our end where it's at, you know.
Is there money from the state available? I get different feedback on possible state money available for the county conservation
There's grant
department.
money out there, and I think we allocated $100,000 of our ARPA money for Chris to try to pull some grants in, you know. So, that's a pretty reasonable amount, you know, trying to pull some grants in. I think we lost the Wellmark grant, and and that's up to Chris to look for some more of them grants.
So did the county supervisor actually cut his budget this year?
Yes.
And is there a reason for that?
Well, it's kind of a complicated thing.
Okay.
You wanna go with this, or you want me to?
Yeah, and I would, I tell you what, let me touch on that, but I'd rather everybody got a chance to talk
Very
first,
good, very
and
good.
we'll address those questions.
Anybody else?
Chris Blazing, 201 Rogues Road. We have FEMA lots basically surrounding the property that we own and have had for 20, 25 years. You know, we have a lot of concerns in regards to what the proposition is, whether it's maintenance, whether it's trash, whether it's sanitary, who's gonna be in those spots if it were allowed. And of course, we oppose it greatly. We're definitely in favor of the conservation effort, and we would like to help them as much as possible. And we like your support so that we don't have to deal with people in our backyard or side yards, and in turn support the conservation effort. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ron Wonderlich, 204 Edgewater Beach Road. All the roads and driveways up there from Tama Road are maintained by us. We pay for it, you know, take care of them, they're in nice shape. If we have bad weather and somebody comes up there in one of these lots and drags a bunch of mud out the road, you know, they're not gonna have a welcome wagon waiting for them up there, I'm telling you. It's just, you know, we try to make it nice up there. And I understand wanting to camp and be on the river, but, you know, invest in property like we have. You know, it's, you know, that's my big concern. I don't have any right next to me, but I can see everybody's point. I just, you know, not in favor of it, but along with everybody else, I do support Chris, you know, and I hope they can do okay.
Some of my emails, some of the people I talked to commend you for taking care of some of the dead trees.
Yeah, we try.
Yeah.
Brad Weiss, I have 2 lots down there on Edgewater Beach with adjacent FEMA lots next to them. We've kept them up for years. I know we weren't supposed to. It was supposed to be natural areas, but there's one down on Levy Crossing 1, and the ditchweed's about this tall. You can't even see the sign, it's going up over the sign. And like in my email, I stated that I don't think the county would chastise us for keeping them up, because our taxes go up, we get reassessed, you know, we pay our tax, we pay a premium down there, we get reassessed. But if we had one of those lots next to our property, then that's bad news. I had a lot next to me for years that was owned by an individual that never kept it up, and I kept it up for them, just the simple fact that I didn't want weeds this tall right next to my house with vermin in it and mosquitoes in it and stuff like that. I understand the natural areas, but these are residential areas, and I don't think a natural area or an unkept lot in a residential area is a good thing. And we wouldn't allow it in the city, we wouldn't allow it in the counties. Some cities actually come in and clean them up for you. And so that's what we were complaining about. We, you know, like Chris said, maybe we should have enforced that a little more. Well, but we shouldn't be allowed, we shouldn't have those next to our properties. Because it drags down our properties, plus it causes vermin and mosquitoes, and there's enough mosquitoes down there the way it is. But that's why we kept them up. And it does look nice down there, and it is marketable for that, but we've done all that work ourselves. In fact, we even, as the trees fall, now that we've had all these dead trees in the last couple of years, as those limbs fall, we have to clean them up. The one, and 2 of them on, well, I've got them on both properties, but the one, there's one next to me that's got 4 dead trees, and I've got a pile of brush this tall right now, just from picking it up and piling it up. And Ron's helped me pile some up actually too, so. That's all I wanted to say, was that we kept them up for a reason, and it was to keep our property values up, and hence, I think it shows in our tax base. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. As far as the taxes, talk about your high taxes, that's the state. We have to go to the auditor's office.
Exactly.
And deal that with them, so we have no control over that.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to say thanks to all you guys that did do that work, you know, the picking up limbs and all of that stuff, that on property that wasn't yours, to because you have pride in where you live. That means a lot, which is appreciated. I also want to, I just want to get this out of the way real quick. I also want to say, Chris, I'm not mad at you for turning over every stone. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I feel like if you wouldn't have looked at it, maybe you weren't doing your job. I disagree with it as well. I'm not for that, but at the same time, I can appreciate you looking for ways of revenue and for your department. That being said, I think we can find a different way. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but I appreciate where everybody's coming from. I know with some of the emails, I didn't even email, I just called you back because it's just easier to just get it out and say, hey, how I feel about it. But I just want it out there that I do appreciate, Chris, where you're coming from, and I can appreciate everybody that supports Chris on that as well. But I just feel like the FEMA land was, once the government takes a hold of that, and I think we now let the government do what it does and leave it at that. But anyway, so the rest.
Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, 2 minutes is up for people to call in, so.
Can I have a couple minutes?
Yes, you can.
First, thanks for coming down here. We appreciate your support for conservation, and
making us aware of your concerns. And I want to apologize to all the people in the Tama Road area for the alarm caused by the conservation's leasing proposal. It is not and will not be the practice of Des Moines County to intentionally inflict emotional distress on our residents. The conservation director mentioned leasing of the FEMA property in passing at a recent Board of Supervisors meetings. I assumed he was talking about agricultural use, like the reuse of the 2008 buyout properties, and didn't think much about it. It didn't occur to me that conservation would disrupt the peace and emotional well-being of homeowners. And I read the article too, and I'd make one comment. Operating something like a business does not mean generating revenue by threatening to disrupt people's lives. I know this board has no intention of that. We will not allow that. The board has always been supportive of conservation. We appreciate the great events and wonderful programs they sponsor. They have a great staff and unbelievably supportive volunteers, but our priority is and always will be the provision of essential services and protection of the taxpayers. The Conservation Board and the Board of Supervisors have different priorities and visions. The Board of Supervisors, our primary responsibility is to maintain the financial health of Des Moines County, to provide the mandated services, and do so being as gentle on the taxpayers as we can be. And that's what we tried to do. The Conservation Board, they have different vision, they have different responsibilities, wants to build things. They want to use all their revenues to build new things. And the vision changes a little bit there. The Board of Supervisors looks at it like the revenue from that additional infrastructure, the cost of that is the operation and maintenance of that infrastructure. Conservation Board thinks that the taxpayers should pick up the operation and maintenance. There's a disagreement there. Not saying either one of us is right or wrong. We have different responsibilities. And I was reading the paper, I think, Mr. Archer, I think you mentioned in your email that there were ARPA funds available. And there are, there's rules for that. But the Conservation Board came to us a couple months ago with a request for $1 million in ARPA funds. They want to put a $4 million improvement out of Big Hollow. As part of that improvement, they want to spend $1.61 million on 2 cabins. Now, you guys probably know more about cabins than I do. I'm thinking you can probably build a pretty nice cabin for $800,000. Would that be correct?
Yes.
And I can't see the future. That to me doesn't look like a very good expenditure of funds. So we go round and around sometimes about what we think of an expenditure of funds is. We have trouble getting conservation. We've asked them 2 years to follow the county's salary structure. And the board, or the Code of Iowa, gives Conservation Board the power to appoint the conservation director and his rate of pay, and the conservation director then has the right to hire people at whatever pay they want. But the Code of Iowa also says that the county only has a duty to provide office space for conservation. It's not a mandated service. We've been very generous with conservation. Sometimes we get a little put out that we ask for things year after year after year to please follow county guidance, and the answer is always the same, no. So anyway, I'm not raining on them. I'm just saying there's 2 ways of looking at this. So that's what we're wrestling with. I think I can speak for the board, or I just heard him. I know I can speak for the board. This leasing isn't going to happen. There's nothing about this that any of us understood, but, so forget that. We will reach an agreement with conservation of some sort. I don't know what it'll be, we do every year. But I do appreciate you coming down here. So, and I apologize for any anxiety this has caused any of you, and I'm sure if somebody was gonna, in the lot next to my house, and they were gonna start renting it out as a party bus, I wouldn't get any sleep because I'd be upset, and my wife wouldn't let me get sleep the rest of the time. So I know exactly how you feel. So that said, like I said, thank you for coming down, and the board apologizes.
Well, I think pretty much spoke for all of us. I don't know what changed it for me. Okay, with an eye, we're out of here.
Jim?
Whoop. Oh, excuse me.
I'd like to lend some comments to some of that. So first off, regarding bringing this up just in passing, so this discussion regarding doing something with FEMA buyout areas has been talked about at length by the Conservation Department since at least 2019. It's written into our strategic plan that is reviewed annually at our Conservation Department. That we put something in there to look at doing possibly something with FEMA buyout areas. The idea of possibly building campgrounds on some of the larger ones, or the discussion of having them leased has come up repeatedly over years and has been discussed for 3 months running at Conservation Board meetings. The last one, we actually had the letter that we were going to send to the property owners to invite them to this public meeting. At some point, if we were going to get serious about doing this process of looking at doing leases, we wanted to make sure we got public input. And so that was purely on that of, we knew that it probably was going to be unpopular, but with our budget situation, we trying to find every ounce of revenue we possibly can. So this was one that floated to the top that we were going to get serious about. And so in the interest of making sure that we were transparent and open to the public about it, this is why we had the public meeting last Tuesday and discussed this, and that's why we're here. This will be on my board's agenda tomorrow to discuss. I don't think my board's got a lot of appetite for it either, but we're discussing all possibilities. And in our work session, we're gonna talk about some of the other possibilities and things that we've been looking at as far as cutting costs and generating revenue. So this was not just something that came out of the blue that we tried to incite a riot about. This has been strategic, it has been on our radar for quite some time. It's just now to the point where we have to get serious about it. As far as the cabins, building a residential cabin is very different from building a public cabin. And if you have to, if you guys were going to build a cabin and you had to run all of the infrastructure as well, including the roads, including the septic system, the sewer system, and the electric, and the water, to get to where you're going, that runs the costs up quite a bit. I imagine if any of you have run rapid water to your place, you know what that costs. So now add several hundred feet of distance into a very specific septic system, probably not also building everything to ADA standards as well. So that does run costs up. I know that cost seems astronomical, and I don't know that it'll ever happen, but that's what we're seeing from demand as far as what the public would like to see in our park, as far as this vision. And so that's where that comes from. And then as far as the salaries, there are a number of different salary systems across the county, depending on what bargaining unit you're part of. And we established one, this was now going on 8 years ago, to try to, over a long period of time, get our salaries caught up to at least the state average. And rather than doing 6-month increases the way general bargaining units would do, we're trying to do a step system that is almost twice the number of steps over 10 years. And so a number of our salaries at the top end still have not caught up to the state average for similar employees across the state within the world of county conservation. We're simply trying to be competitive, but doing it over a long period of time. And we can get into the nuances of that too if we want to in our work session. But and Tom, you're right, we do have differences of opinion on things, and and I think that's fine, and I think that having these discussions like this is a great thing. I know you guys don't agree with this leasing thing, but please understand, it wasn't to where I was just trying to rile people up and get you all upset. This was considered, thought out well in advance, and it finally reached a point where we decided to start acting on it. But to do so, we wanted to make sure we had public opinion and public input on it, rather than just blindly running off into some new program.
You still got work on kneecaps.
So far, not out of the room yet. That's all I got.
Okay, with an eye, we're out of here, gentlemen.
Aye.
We do have a work session with public health and county attorney and the board. We're gonna take a 5-minute break and then we'll have that.
Thank you.
We have a work station.
Thank you.
Following it with the conservation board. Trent, you ready?
I do, yes, and I had on
Okay, we're
the top of
ready.
each desk a copy of the ordinance as
Let me, we're here for a workstation with Public Health, Attorney's Office, the Board of Supervisors for a nuisance ordinance. Okay, sorry, Trent, you go ahead here.
Okay, so I set on each of your desks a copy of what I have up here on the board now. So this is very good. We just got this morning some recommendations from the city as well, and I believe, did you hand those out?
Yes, I did.
To implement, so that was based off of the one that we worked on last time. So, one that was circulated after the last meeting. I made some adjustments based on recommendations from Jared. Didn't take all of his recommendations. Some were, writing style. Some changed statutory language from the state code. But some were spot on, good substantive changes. So really appreciate that, Jared. Thank you. One of the things that this copy that the city gave us, which is very good, it's a little different. They have a section in here, right of entry and inspection, which I'd had that in separate. I know we've talked about doing this as a three-part system. Initially getting the nuisance ordinance in, assigned and done, and then having an exit ramp for abandoned properties.
I apologize, Trent, where's the right of entry part?
So that would be in the one that came this morning from the
Oh,
city.
it's not in this copy?
No.
It's not in
I
this
put it
copy,
on
that's,
your
that's,
desk.
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, Trent, Kristen. Thank you.
So with that, we'd already had that worked into the part, because that's in the statute as it comes to abandonment. That's part of what has to happen within the abandonment statute. But I like what Eric did, putting in here better, briefly. That's a good idea. To have it in here, so that way, because this is the starting point, and then that really creates a nexus where those two ordinances will combine. So we can pull that in as is here, or as I have it in the other one. Either way will probably work. I imagine they're probably using similar operative language from the Iowa code. There's some other recommended changes. Let's see. One they added as determined by the nuisance compliance officer for section 1 definitions. That's fine, we can add that. I think that's been added in now and taken away. But that discretion, I think, is in line with what the board has wanted. Yeah. Okay, they changed that one, let's see what, so we have deposit store of flammable junk such as old rags, rope, cordage. So, yeah, but not limited to, such as, but not limited to, that's not that. So 3 bin refrigerators. Eric, in 3, you have in your recommendation still allowed if doors are moved, still a nuisance. Do you want to talk to that? I guess
we have two aspects. It's probably an emergency abatement on our end if the doors are on, but if they're off, it's still a refrigerator sitting in someone's yard with the doors off, from our standpoint, still a nuisance. So whether they have them on or off, it's still decaying, and so that's, I guess, just the wording on it. Here it says, which does not have the doors or locks removed, so if they were removed, it wouldn't be a nuisance under this code.
Yeah, and we specifically changed that last time.
Yeah, and I think this, of course, we're not a city.
Yeah.
It not so much as doesn't look like we're looking at something that's a safety or a health or a fire hazard, and just a refrigerator by itself with no door on it. I don't think it.
You're buying a lot of them in the road ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
From our standpoint too, a collection of water or mosquitoes and bugs, if it's just sitting there, that'd be a nuisance on our end.
That in itself might be some sort of a nuisance, a health hazard.
Yeah.
But,
Hey, can I mention this? What if you've got one that
Excuse
has the
me?
doors removed, you got kids playing around and one kid gets trapped underneath the other, and somebody pushes it over.
Yeah, that would be-
Hopefully, they're strong enough to push it back over, but maybe that's just,
You got a good point.
all of those things go through, so.
there's a lot of things that.
There's a lot of things that can
could,
happen.
You can make a risk out of if,
Mhm.
I'm sure some of the board members here have done things from, they were young, they were lucky to have walked away from. I see what you're saying. I don't think so.
Okay, then as we get to 4, there's some recommended language, and this has been changed a couple of times now. And I think the reality is, if we look up, by adding this as determined by the nuisance compliance officer, I think that fixes anything with 4. So all buildings so dilapidated or out of repair as to be dangerous, unsafe, unsanitary, or otherwise unfit for any useful purpose was.
That will open up the floodgates, I think.
Well, it does, and so you can look, and Eric's here, you can talk, you guys have like 20 different, very specific, talking about board weight, I mean, it's down to the T. And that's why I think we really need to, and I can pull it into 4 if you want, so that way it states as determined by the nuisance compliance officer. But at the end of the day, if we're gonna, I mean, because it can come from various different things.
I think that's where on our end, the subjectivity of that leads to more appeals and more processes, and then they're claiming it's not abandoned or unsafe or whatever, because they don't feel it is, and the nuisance officer is saying it is, but where's the determination? Then you have the appeal to public health and the appeal to board of supervisors, and it's kind of subjective of what that is. So on our end, we want to take that out where it clearly states this is what that means, so you can appeal, but it clearly states it. But I guess that, from our end, just trying to deter some of those appeals just based on, I feel it's not this, and one person saying it is, one isn't, so. But we do have a long list we have a whole code section, chapter 160, abandoned unsafe buildings, and there's 19 criteria there that determines abandoned unsafe. So whether you wanted to use any of those, any or all, or not at all, it's up to you guys, but that's how we operate.
What's your thought process?
My thought process is I think that's what they wanted. Isn't that what you guys wanted when we first started discussing this? That there's hurdles that people can come back to and discuss and have those conversations, but I think the Board of Health was the first hurdle. And if they determine it, if it's, and then they can then appeal it to the Board of Supervisors. I think that's what you guys' process and what you guys wanted a few
It is,
weeks ago.
we want to keep it because it's a county and not a city. And there's all number of people that look at their neighbor's property or property they drive by regularly and say that, that's offensive, that doesn't look safe, it doesn't look this, it doesn't look that. He, she, they should clean that up. I'm gonna call it county. We want to keep that that pipeline as controlled as we can, so that, up here it says, you know, that, a nuisance cannot be merely aesthetic.
So if it just looked in disrepair, that would not trigger anything, but it looked in disrepair and there's holes in the roof and there's windows kicked out or walls are falling in, that then adds another layer of when you would cite that as a nuisance violation.
Yeah, see, when I read aesthetics, I'm thinking about makeup, so I'm just thinking about peeling paint, stuff like that. I'm not even, yeah, I wouldn't even think that that would have, make it to the broken windows. I would think that would be another layer.
Broken window, to me, would be aesthetic unless it's adjacent to another property, because we've got the one in the county where the wind blows broken glass onto a neighbor's yard where, you know, where they've got children. That would be it. But if somebody's got an old barn out in the middle of a field and look like crap, but if you've got windows missing or something like that, I think you could run into a lot of those things out in the county.
And it seems like it's still, that they're still using it and stuff like that, that it's not a problem with.
Well, even if they aren't using it, it's sitting there, it's not important to them to take it down, or they consider it a risk. I just like the definitions of nuisance to be tight and not look like, you know, I don't like that. You know, it's a nuisance. It's got 3 windows broken, all the windows broken. I'm sure they don't use it for anything.
And keep in mind, a barn would fall under the agriculture side of it, so we wouldn't deal with that anyway.
But if somebody had a house with all the windows busted out, that's a problem.
They're not living there.
Right, that's not aesthetic, that's a
Right.
flop house or whatever.
And typically, when we see windows broken out, we also see a huge hole in the roof, or the roof is falling in. I mean, there's other layers that add to this, and you just don't, you know, if someone's paint's falling off, we don't deal with any of that stuff. I mean, we enforce nuisance all the time, and you get to know, what the county's wanting, and, you know, obviously, there's not everything is gonna be the same across the board, but you tend to deal with a lot of the same stuff.
And it would first go to the nuisance officer?
It would come to us on whether or not they would determine it, well, me or whoever, I haven't decided we're gonna do it.
Well, no, but whoever the up compliance or the nuisance officer
Correct.
is, it would go to them, they would look at it and say, yes, this is.
Then you have an appeals
this is that.
process.
And then it could go to the Board of Health.
And then if they determine it still continues as a nuisance,
They could appeal it
there's
to the Board of
still another
Supervisors.
appeals process, and then,
How long is this appeals process to drag out the?
well, I think it's fairly quickly.
You're saying when it comes up to the board, then Eric, you said you got another
14 days, I think.
whole guideline that goes beyond that, right?
Well,
Like on
ours
the,
is up front so that we know, they can clearly see, is this a nuisance or not? We make that determination, they can appeal that, but it's not just, I'm saying it's a nuisance and you're saying it's not, there's no guidelines to say who's right or wrong. That just makes it, from our standpoint, difficult. It makes for more appeals and more staff time, which we don't want.
so from your standpoint, you say it's a nuisance, it is a nuisance, there's no argument.
We can cite where it defines that nuisance section, or where it defines that in our code.
So when we get to the next one, nuisance policy for Des Moines County, and this is roughed up and not, you know, not necessarily ready for prime time, but it's close enough. So, notify property owner of persons occupying premises and the Board of Supervisors of nuisance issues. And so this I'll probably change to Board of Health, because we're starting there. So mailed, certified, or via Des Moines County Sheriff's Department finding nuisance letter within 7 days after the valid nuisance issuance exists, with a 30-day time frame for corrective action to the property owner. So they're gonna have this time period within which to appeal. We'll build into the letter. We can say 30 days. Any person ordered to obey the nuisance may request a hearing within 30 days, which is what I have written here, of the date of the initial letter sent by the no contact order to obey. So the good thing about that is, say if we have to certify, like you're saying, instead of 10 days, 30 days, but 30 days from the date of that mailing. So say we send certified mail today, that starts the clock. We don't have to wait till somebody shows up, signs, or they don't sign, and we eventually get it back. You know, we know when that clock is starting. There's different ways to go about that, but that's a good way. Now we also run into, we'll have to comply with the rules of civil procedure, because eventually this could end up in civil court. So, but this 30 days gives them plenty of notice and time to appeal. And so then you go from there. A request for hearing must be made in writing and received by Des Moines County Auditor's Office on or before 30 days of the initial letter sent by no contact, or the nuisance compliance officer, to abate the nuisance. If a request for hearing is received within the time frame allowed, the hearing will be scheduled at the next available date with the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors. Here and again, we decide this to be Board of Health. Board of Health to determine if a nuisance does exist. So the question is, how often does the Board of Health meet?
Once a month.
Once a month. So that'll get it the next Board of Health meeting. If for some reason we get it, it's a day or two before Board of Health meeting, I think we can all agree to a continuance at that point, just so that way they can prepare, we can prepare. And then it's a smidge over a month, but basically it's a month. Does that answer that question? So when we don't have this written into the ordinance, this is a separate document. And that's what I'm saying, this is kind of the way you look at these code sections, there's two different code chapters we're working with. And when you look at the case law, many of the counties and or municipalities, what they're doing is they're starting with the nuisance ordinance. And if they don't get a response, then they go into this right of entry for inspection, which Eric has written in here, which is what I call the exit ramp. Because it's one thing if we're dealing with somebody, there's a nuisance property, somebody lives there, or we at least have an active owner that's communicating with us, saying, yes, this is ours, we will do this, or they're saying, not no, but hell no, nana boo-boo. Right? I mean, we've all dealt with those people, right? So, whatever it is, there's a person there we're dealing with. If there isn't, then there's this exit ramp into, we're dealing with an abandoned property, which is an entirely different question of how we want to handle it, or how you guys want to handle it as a whole. But this right of entry and inspection goes into that as far as serving that notice, getting a warrant to be able to go in. But, so the way we have it set up, or the way I propose that we do it, is have a nuisance policy ordinance for the county. And we pass this first. And then we go from there and we pass in the abandoned property ordinance next. And that abandoned property ordinance, we won't get to for several months anyways, because we have to start this ordinance process. And then at that point, we can look at the whole, or we could go ordinance, look at it, pass the ordinance, pass the nuisance policy, and then move into the abandoned property portion, which is the last part of that procedure. In a rolling start as opposed to having everything all start at the same time. So with this document is something we can approve in resolution if you wanted, or I would think we would want a resolution, should, or it could be done contractually or with a 2080 or however you wanted to put it together with whoever we decide to be the nuisance compliance officer if we wanted to contract with that. So this could be done, and there's lots of different ways to get to this portion of it. But I would think a resolution is probably best.
You have any comment on that, Eric or Bruce?
Bruce, quick question, because you've looked through this, you've been here for, are the things we're looking at, let's pretend you were gonna be that nuisance officer. We're not saying,
willing to pretend.
well, we're just pretend. But anyway, does this look like, it would be doable? Is it too far, or make it too difficult to enforce, or?
I mean, you add another layer on it when you get the Board of Health involved, but I understand the hurdles, and we've talked about those. But you're really looking at a handful of properties in the county is really what this is for. And so you guys either make this as much or as little as you want, and you set the standards, on that. I mean, if it's not the intent of the board to, I don't think it is, to go out and find toilets and this other stuff in people's yard, it's to deal with these few properties. But you deal with them, a few of them a year. And that's probably what you're going to be, enforcing it at. And then it just comes down to setting the standards and it can always go, it could always go to the other end of the spectrum, I get that, but in our case and in my experience, it's that you get to know what, your baseline is and where you start. And people give input. There's some things that we look at and say, okay, it doesn't really meet the threshold, even though it kind of does. And we get a property owner who calls in and says, hey, this is, putting a damper on my property value. And so you go out and look at it and say, yeah, it does meet the threshold. Let's get it cleaned up. And typically those people then start working on cleaning up the property. It's the ones that are really, really bad, or the buildings are falling in. Those are the troublesome ones that we deal with. And that's where then you have legal involved, and it just keeps taking it to another level.
Well, one thing I do agree with is we're only gonna have a couple of these a year. It's not gonna be crazy, so let's just make it how we started off. Let's make it where we've got some peanut butter for it to stick to, and that it's as black and white as possible. I like the cities. You guys start getting into that.
I can tell you from our standpoint, we have 1,500 complaints a year that we have to go inspect every one to see if it is a nuisance or not. So that may be where you have your time, is whether you're only gonna enforce 6 or 8 a year. If you get 100 calls, you have to go, the time spent going to look at that, determine is it a nuisance or not, make that contact, follow up with the person that complained. I mean, that's, our city council gets a lot of calls. I mean, they get a few calls a week, every week on nuisances, you probably remember. And so that's the time constraint, is once you adopt this, people think that's a nuisance, and I feel it's a nuisance, so I'm gonna call and complain, and who's gonna follow up and look at it and say yes or no.
And we do get a lot of phone calls. We do a lot of inspecting. Sometimes it meets the threshold, sometimes it doesn't, but you do spend a lot of time doing that.
And the looser those definitions are, the more calls you're gonna have. With somebody thinking, that Tom's property, somebody should do something about that. No, I think his should, this applies to his, something like that. There's more than a little bit of that in any county.
I think the reality is, when we dig into this, it says shall inspect. So unfortunately, every time there's a call, we need somebody to go out. But you're right when you say the more specific we are, it's easier to dispatch with it immediately. You walk in and you're like, oh, yeah, that doesn't need it. You see it and you're done. And the question is the broad language or the specific language easier to do that? And I think it's a question of how it's in fact done. If you have this general language, so we're talking about for all buildings so old, dilapidated, or out of repair as to be dangerous, unsafe, unsanitary, or otherwise unfit for any useful purpose. If the complaint is that there's a window out, and you go out there and you see, yes, there's a window out, but everything else is okay, it's not unfit for any purpose, we're good. If you say, yes, there's a window out, therefore we need to look deeper, then now we need to look deeper. But that's all dependent on implementation at this point, and you can cut that either way. I think if we add more specific details, the more specific we get, the more we start to look like we're adding a building code. And we could go to and reference the state, you know, if there's some state minimum codes out there, but.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. Okay. That's, I didn't think that's what you wanted, but.
No, well, I think we're, because I don't think we need to get as hardcore as the city, but we're looking at, you know, we're not looking at the beautiful, you know, this is ugly, next to my house, gonna bring down property value. We're looking at abandoned stuff, places that have been burned down and left, and people are dropping off stuff. We're looking at the hardcore stuff, you know, and again, there's not a heck of a lot of those out there, but I want it to be, well, I think we all do, want it to be catered to just the hardcore stuff and not get into all the small minutia of what the city's doing. I think we can use as a template, but.
Just throwing something, a random thought, I'm not even sure it's a good thought. Could you have like a code, maybe not quite, you know, a little broader, that it would apply to abandoned properties? In other words, if they want, the individuals that owned it moved on, they don't pay taxes, they're gone. Am I making any sense?
No, you are, and honestly, it is a little different when you get to abandoned building ordinance working, okay? Because the code sections are written differently at the state level. So we do have some difference there. Where there is more definitional, you know, you get into this preliminary inspection, petition, all of this, and you know, interested persons and opportunity to be. So it is a different animal. This is all the way back in already. We have to go this part, the ordinance. But it's a different process. It truly is, because the end of the road when you're dealing with the abandoned property and and I think why it's a bit more specific is truly the end of the road when we're dealing with abandoned properties, the ultimate sanction is available, and that's the state taking the property. That ultimate sanction is not available in the nuisance abatement portion there. So I think that's probably a little bit of why, but it is much more specifically done in that one. And I've worked this, I've put it together a little bit. I have not dug nearly as deep into this one yet as we have the first one, because
Our problem child right now, if I'm right, they're all paying taxes on these properties.
The ones that have come into
that came to us.
Okay.
They're all
Yeah.
paying taxes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, So that's gonna wipe that out, abandoned on them, if they're paying taxes on them, they're definitely not abandoned.
Not necessarily.
Well, kind of, sort of, but I know what you're saying. They walked away.
Like the one south of town where you have nobody occupying it, but you have this family trust that's paying the taxes, but it's an abandoned building. So, that one, the taxes are being paid, but it's by definition abandoned. Nobody's there. One of them is unfortunately got such severe mental health problems that they're homeless in the event that they're out and about, and the other's in prison, right, for a long, long time. So that's an abandoned property.
And we run into that. And we've got 3 properties right now that are sitting in trust. One specifically, both of the kids have now died. And then where do you go? Because we don't have the other ordinance then to say, is it abandoned? We've got one that the parents have passed away. The daughter still pays the taxes, has nothing to do with the property, and it's falling in on itself. And so then we can't take her to court because she's not part of the actual deed to then go and enforce, but she's part of the trust as an executor, but then you can't take them to court to go and enforce it, or at least that's been our.
But the people that are part of the deed are dead, correct?
People that are part of
deceased.
Are deceased, but the property then, we don't have the other section that Trent's talking about, for abandonment. So then who do you go to enforce the nuisance side of it?
So there's no beneficiary or of that trust act, there's no living
I
actual.
don't know anything about the
Yeah,
trust,
that's-
I just know it's in a trust. But who do you then take, and we've submitted, we filed, you can still get a judgment, but then where does the judgment goes towards? It goes towards the trust. Well, if it's never paid, you're sitting there and the property still continues. So you really gotta look, we keep talking about this off-ramp. This is the off-ramp. You either go down, continue down the road on the nuisance side of it, and this is your, then one provision that you could go, or you go an off-ramp on someone, A, cleaning it up, or, you decipher how hard or what the county's wanting to do as far as enforcement.
Well, apparently, we're not as close to having this squashed as.
If they're paying if you have a trust paying the taxes, you assess the expenses of cleaning that up to the taxes. What's that do with the trust? Does the trust go ahead and pay that, or if it's paying $100 a year, does it just keep paying $100 a year, or?
The answer to that is, I don't know, because each specific trust
Trust
is
is
set up differently. We have no way of getting visibility of that. Maybe possibly filing suit and trying discovery, maybe. I mean, that, so it does get wonky. They may have a trust that says we'll pay, annual, property taxes as assessed, but not, not have provisions for special assessments, which this would be.
But Trent, those
but-
special assessments go with the property, right?
Yeah, ultimately, if somebody doesn't pay a special assessment, we dealt with that just last spring. Ultimately, if somebody doesn't pay a special assessment but pays their regular property tax, they'll still go up for tax sale and they'll eventually lose it. That somebody buys that, pays those taxes by buying that.
That's not, we dealt with that. County paid $18,000 to go and claim the property. Within 6 months, it was back in the same state. It's in a trust, went up for tax sale, no one bought the property, and this has been now going on 8 years.
Yeah.
So no one buys it and it just sits there. I think one of the daughters is paying like $100 and something a month on taxes or whatever it is.
And you can't, there's no way to get that money back.
Not that we found.
Not unless somebody buys it with the assessment attached. Sometimes I think they'll make an offer on something and say, we'll give you $1,000 for that, but you forget about the $5,000 assessment for Moines for the last 2 years.
And this is what a lot of cities and counties do. They'll use this provision and say, okay, we're gonna sell it, you know, as is for $5,000, we've taken ownership, you've got this many days to get it cleaned up. Then you get it put back on the, well, it's on the tax reel already, but then you get put on the tax reel for someone else to potentially buy it, then build, and they build a different building, and now you're back up in the counties collecting taxes versus not collecting taxes.
Yeah, and I think Eric could talk to this, because you guys do this, right? So, and do you have you set aside a set amount from what Mr. Bird told me, I believe? Is that his name, Mr. Bird? Yeah. Okay. That you guys basically budget so much annually, and you go through and clean up as many properties?
We budget about $75,000 annually for nuisance abatement, and then that pays the contractor, and then that gets assessed to the property if they don't pay it. Some we send the bill, just like you're saying here, some come to City Hall and pay it. Some it goes on the taxes and then gets paid eventually.
Okay. So is there anything revolving about that at all, or not?
Is there what?
Anything revolving about that at all? Does any of that come back in, or?
Well, it goes back into the general fund, and it's funded out of the general fund. We have an administrative fee as well, because we know there's cost. It's not just the contractor cost, it's $100 administrative fee for a nuisance that we abate, $200 for the second time they do it calendar year.
So then that gets added to the
Added
special
to the
assessment?
yeah.
That's good to know.
Because it is a lot of staff time, we can't just do it for free. So what's that? Yeah.
So generally, are you able to recoup the funds that's being put out?
We collect back, it's right around, well, it varies year to year. Some years it's 50,000 we'll collect, some might be even more, it'll be 75 or 80,000. Depends on sales and how many people pay during their taxes, but most of the time we collect, it's a lag in that collection. I think we collect around 10 to 12 that's paid directly to the city, and 50 to 60 that comes through county when they pay their taxes. But then we have ones, we acquire abandoned properties through 657A. Those don't get paid, those get wiped out when we acquire that property, so that's kind of a dead cost. But we're able to get that property and then get it in the hands of someone that's gonna pay taxes and improve it over time.
And so those would be the ones that are coming off of this exit ramp that we're talking, where they do go through, there's nobody there. So you go through with this, getting a warrant as per the code, which is required, having a nuisance control officer, plus one other person, so I propose a deputy, but he would have to go in with somebody to exercise that warrant, look to see if the building is safe or not. And, you know, and that's, again, this is, I think, for us, a three-step process. That's part of the abandoned building process. So, and then, based on that, we can decide if we want to move forward, if not, if nobody's there, no, I mean, but I think that's a different question than just nuisance abatement alone. Because we can do nuisance abatement alone, and if it's abandoned, be like, oh, there's nobody here. And I think I gave that example last time about the lawn mowing and those letters. You know, there's some people that mow the lawn every time we send them a letter from the city. And if they don't get a letter, they're not mowing the lawn, you know? And maybe I'm not the best one to give that example, because I'm not super good at mowing my lawn. But, you know, it gets done once a month, whether it needs to be not. But
They probably got a budget line postage for Trent.
no, I've never gotten a letter, but there's times I'm probably close. I mean, I know it, if it rains on the weekend and I don't get it done, and I'm just like, oh, you know, especially in the spring when I'm coaching, if I don't get it done on the weekend, it's gotta wait till that next Saturday, because it's just, or I'm doing it at night.
Across the street has a lawn business.
Well, I have called, I've had to call Dwayne before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, it's happened. I'm like, hey, can you, yeah, he sends a bill, no problem. So yeah, but that does happen sometimes.
Well, I like that off-ramp deal then,
Mhm.
that, tech phase there. I don't know. I think Eric and Bruce both agree with that off ramp, don't you? Yeah. Okay, so if we get back to the nuisance ordinance, moving on, I don't see any recommended changes to 5. 6, they've got an as determined, that we maybe make change a little bit. So this recommendation was made by Jared as well. I have changed this so what we have in the handout and up here is any structure determined to be a fire hazard which risks spreading to adjacent properties by the fire marshal of the jurisdiction or his designee. And I think that'll cover both recommended changes. Then section 2, nuisance prohibited. I think we changed that. This right of entry addition, I think we can put it in there. I know I have language that comes straight from the code, and the other one, so straight from state code as it's written in the code for abandoned properties. I think we can put that in here for this one as well. And that way, and that's talking about the administrative search warrant and all that jazz. So they're using the same language too, which comes directly from the Iowa code for abandoned properties. So we can put that in there as a section 3, have section 3 become section 4, abatement. Okay, so if you go down to D, they have a recommended change. Delivered, certified, sale of the property owner. Oh.
D, we send certified mail to the property owner, but sometimes it's a rental or something. We put an orange placard on the door so we know the tenant, whoever's there, is receiving that same notice, because we don't know if it's owner occupied or not. And they may, we get certified mail that comes back to us, or it may take a while, but at least they're aware they're going in that front door. That's just our process. It's not necessarily what you need to do.
Is there a fee with just the orange, is that $100 on the orange placard? Oh, no.
Fee associated with posting it?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
The fee only comes into play when they don't do the abatement themselves, when we have to do it as a city.
So I have in here, additional notice shall be posted at the residence, and I will look, there is operative language. So say if we wanted to do an FUD or 30-day notice, both of those are going to require a posting on the door. So you do give notice to the owner of record, but you also then, well, those you post on the door, so you would, I think best practice would be to add that provision. So that way we're mailing it to whoever the owner is, but we're posting at the door, and then that covers.
I like that.
Notice for any occupant.
If you're putting shall there, can you put additional notice maybe? 'Cause this here says we have to do it both ways.
Yes.
I'd rather have may than shall.
I think, again, I think when we're looking at this, to treat it similar to how they would a 30-day notice or an FED, forcible entry detainer, the courts, when they look at it, they're gonna want notice like that too. They're used to seeing it done that way when dealing with property rights. So, and it's a lot easier to make sure that we have the notice done right up front than it is to get to the end of the line
and be sitting in front of a judge in district court, and he or she takes their glasses off and looks at the paper again and says, well, Trent, I don't think we have proper notice. And we're just done and we gotta start all over. So I really think, this is something that's a very good idea to put in there.
Plus, it'll shut down the people playing games with the property.
Sure.
We didn't get it, we don't know what you're talking about.
Can I ask a question about item D? It says the notice may be delivered by certified mail to the property owner as well as any address on file with the county recorder.
Mhm. Yeah,
Keep
and
track of addresses.
Yeah, I had mentioned that too, submitted comments, because I think that's probably need to be the assessor with her.
no, for property right ownership, if somebody wants notice from the county, they can go to Natalie and they can put a filing on the chain of title. But it's really gonna be who.
Oh, filing a lien, okay, yeah, that would be, it's just that the part about any address on file with the county recorder, that just.
Trent, or maybe Janelle, so there's a handful of properties that are paid, in taxes are paid by trust. So when you mail correspondence, when this correspondence will go to the property owner, does it go to that trust? Do they get a copy of it? Who does the mail go to? If it's Joe Doe's property, who knows where Joe Doe is, but there's a trust that said to pay Joe Doe's taxes.
So when the transaction happens, so you're to buy some property at Tamer Road, so you have a beach house, right? No, I mean, but just to throw that out there, right? So anytime anybody buys property, the recorder requires a cover sheet. And on that cover sheet, as long as it's gonna be more than one page, and that cover sheet's going to have addresses on there. So it's gonna have the address for the preparer of the document, it's gonna have the address for the owner, and it's gonna have the address where tax information is to be sent.
If it's correct.
If it's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, if somebody abandons the property, they're probably not gonna leave a forwarding address. I'm just saying, so this would get to that trust, the information that this is going on, and whether they do anything with it or not, I don't know.
And a lot of times we found issues with sometimes the addresses, because they'll put their old address on there even though they might have moved to that location or another location. And I mean, it's a constant battle with all of us updating the addresses to get, because anybody can come down on a trust and say, hey, I'm the trustee now, I want that tax statement sent to my house, right? So that I can pay the taxes on it.
So I know as far as property rights interest is a technical construct. If somebody wants their property rights protected, we're a file state, so it has to be on file with the county recorder. If it's not, it's not. So that creates some weird things sometimes. Like when Ryan was looking at, last week, when Ryan was looking at so the deed referenced the agreement as far as for Waters Park. You know, the deed referenced, so the deed transferred pursuant to that agreement as an ancillary agreement, so that that deed with that reference was on file, but that agreement as for the maintenance agreement was never recorded. So the question was, part of the question was, is that still valid now 50 years later? What were the record rules back then? And I don't know the laws of recording documents in the 70s. I just don't. I'd have to look and see, right? But the reality is, if something's not recorded now, today, for property rights purposes, it's not recorded. all transfers have to be recorded. There's some, so that's the right, and it's coming from the Iowa code, but that's right. It's property interest are done through the county recorders. We're gonna have throughout our system all kinds of addresses for people. And like I remember when I was in law school, the DOT they were taking and issuing driver's license. So you would go in, you'd get your driver's license updated, they would put the information in, update your driver's license, and then literally turn the computer around, is that your information? And the driver's license, so they had a big picture of the driver's license that you could look at, and you look at your address and you'd be like, yep, that's right. And then below, they had mailing address and a different thing written, and they weren't changing the mailing addresses. So you had people who were losing their driver's license for not paying things. And the notice was sent to the mailing address, which was different than the address on the driver's license. So, at 04, 05, when I was legal, we were fighting those left and right. And eventually, Supreme Court said, no, you should know. Essentially, you're tricking those citizens when you're saying, is this address right, showing them a picture of the driver's license, and then having a different address below where they're not looking. And so now they have to, if you go to the DOT, they have a different procedure so that the mailing address on your driver's license and your mailing address is the same. Because why would you have, it shouldn't be different anyways, right? But, so you're always gonna have different addresses within the system, but for property rights, it's the recorder's office is the deal. If we try to get into all the other addresses we may have, we're gonna run into problems again at the end, when somebody comes in and says, oh, no, this code says any address with the county, and yes, I recorded the document as per the rules, and this is the address, but then we had somebody come into the assessors and say, hey, can you send tax information here now, or somebody come into Department of Health, or and be seen for something, and oh, by the way, that's actually HIPAA, right? But they're giving the county a different address when they're getting their shot, or, so it gets, we really want to stay with the county recorder there, because we're dealing with interest in real property.
Well, I guess we're all in agreement then.
Not yet.
I didn't say I wasn't in agreement, I said it's, I'm not sure how that'll work out. I'm sure there's times where that's not gonna work out very well. But we'll, that's, I don't know what to do about that.
We just go to the county assessor's webpage. They'll have listed there where you send your tax information and where the address is, and we send it off to both. So we've never had a problem. I'm not saying we will never have a problem, we've just never.
For the most part, though, that works.
There was a suit a few years ago. Somebody had, apparently their tax bill, and I don't remember it got sent to it was supposed to go to the bank or something like that, and it didn't, it went to the person. And anyway, so they, sued to get their taxes back.
Assessment,
Yeah, and I believe they were successful in the end.
I suppose as well as any address on file with the county recorder.
But this might not be the time to try to go through all that, but I'm just throwing that up there that there might be a small problem with that, because the people came in, they talked to me twice. I didn't have anything to do with it. I said, I could want to give you your taxes back. I said, I can't do it. But they pushed that for a while. eventually, court gave them, they were successful.
And I think what we're gonna find is the GIS, so the assessor gets their information through the GIS website, which gets their address, their information from the recorders. And I think when we talk to the recorder and the assessor, they're gonna tell us. that they're-
GIS gets their information through our department.
Yeah, that it's all kind of
Because we
feeding.
do the transfers of the properties, so all that information comes from our office.
Yeah, so it's all feeding through the same chain. But we can put it down like this and double check to make sure it doesn't hurt. But, I think we're gonna find that that's all the same.
Addresses change all the time. I mean.
And if they wanna go by what's sent to the recorder and it comes back undeliverable, then they can start going around to
Yeah,
the
they
other
can start
offices to
checking,
figure out,
yeah.
okay, who's got the most current address, so. It's just one of those research things.
Well, if we do both the county recorder and the assessor's office, that should cover all the addresses.
Right.
Now, my only concern with that, and it has nothing to do with this, but when we look at the timeframes, because now we're reaching out to 2 different offices, as far as getting that letter out in 7 days, we may wanna look at that, just to make sure that we give them an adequate time frame to get all this done, because now we're, changing the process. But I know that we haven't kind of briefly touched on the process, but.
Yeah. So I think, so what I would propose is coming back, putting this forward for vote with the amendments that made here today, and then the additional amendment having section 3 be, this language on right of entry for inspection, which is language, City of Burlington uses. It's also the language that's coming from the Iowa code. And that's also operative language that's required for abatement, abandonment, for abandoned properties anyways. And then having this abatement become section 4, as is, with the additional language for additional notice being posted. And I will look at the language from the code specifically as it pertains to 30-day notice and FEDs.
You're gonna wanna redraft section E as well.
Okay, let's see what we got.
So you're saying a request for a hearing must be made in writing delivered to the Des Moines County Auditor's Office? You won't want that for the Board of Health. You'll want that to come to the Board, to the Public Health Director, to be put on the agenda. You won't have it go to the Auditor's Office until it's deemed currently a nuisance from the Board of Health. And then it would go to the Auditor's Office if they want to continue the process. And I would put that time frame like 14 days, 7 days after the hearing is had from the Board of Health.
And do we have an address for that we can put in there?
For the
Board of
Board
Health?
County Board of Health, yeah, at 22 North 3rd Street,
22.
522 North 3rd Street.
For now. You'll have to revise it when they move.
I'm not a perfect typer.
You're aware, they don't teach you guys how to keyboard, do they?
You know, I had to take a typing class when I was in high school, and I showed up, and there was the 3 Sarahs sitting right there, and then on the other side of the class was me and all the rest of the offensive linemen, and the 3 Sarahs were all pianists for like all of our choir stuff and all of that, and it was graded on a curve, and that was not a fun.
You were getting keys at the time?
Oh my gosh, those 3, it was insane. They were typing like 120 some words a minute, and I'm sitting here trying as hard as I can to get 35. And, this was with the old typewriters back then, But, I mean, not the old ones with the hammers that go ching, but it was old typewriters. Oh man, that was so much work, it was insane. We never did catch up with them. No way.
One thought on the next farm operations. It must be, I think the assessor regularly has discussions or whether property is agricultural or not. And I believe the state defines that pretty well. I don't think you probably want to redefine that. I would guess that you would look at it, does that not work, is look at it, whatever it says on the assessment, that this is agricultural property or not, or maybe not.
There was a ruling, Iowa Supreme Court race ruling that came down 3 years ago that said if you're, because we would deem agriculture as a specific, like you had to do this, this, and this. And they basically said anything to do with agriculture, so it could be showing of a cow. It could be, you feed a cow or you have a chicken. So we completely stay away from all of that. If it even comes close to agriculture, I tell my employees, we're not going down that rabbit hole.
Okay, so if something, so it isn't what the assessor assesses it as farm property or residential property, or it would be if somebody presents it as farm property?
So if it's presented, if you're doing agriculture, anything agriculture, you may not deem it agriculture, but if the state of Iowa deems it as an agriculture process, I stay completely away from it. Now, zoning is a little bit different, because that's what I'm talking about, because we have county zoning in this county. And they used to define it as this, and we don't do that anymore.
I guess what I was saying is that there's rules for the assessor that says, if it's this and this, we define it as agricultural property. If it isn't this and this, it's not.
Well, and those are different.
That way you wouldn't have to decide.
Those are different though, Tom, because, so what the assessors look at is they have to follow primary use. So you have a parcel of land, and they have to look at primary use of that land. So for example, one of the appeals the Board of Review had to look at this year was a farm up off Beaverdale Road, or a residence off Beaverdale Road, and that was the question, right? So this individual had retired from one of the coasts, I can't remember the whole backstory, but they came back here and they built a home in Iowa where they grew up, and it is a magnificent barn-dominium, like 8 bedrooms, I think. Big enough for them, but so they have portions of the residence for each one of their kids, separate family to be able to live. I mean, absolutely just gorgeous, amazing. And then they have, some of their land was hunting ground, and the other, they had 5 acres that was a garden that they do in fact garden, they do in fact come and use, and they have a business set up and they sell things at the farmer's market. And so the 5 acres of that 40 acres was legitimately being used for agricultural purpose, and for our purposes, that would have to be considered agricultural, or an agricultural building, any building that goes along with it. But for assessment, because this beautiful barn, what do they call those like barn mansions, barn-dominiums or something?
House, shome, there's a million different names.
Sure, there's a terminology for it. So they had this 40 acres, but they had this $1 million property basically because of the house that was so big, built on it. So the primary use, so for tax purposes, they look at the primary use. Yes, a portion of that parcel was being used for agricultural purposes, but for tax assessment purposes, the primary use of that property is residential.
So for in this
So
particular use, it would be
us,
agricultural because there is.
Yeah, so anything within those 5 acres, and where there's actually, so say if they have like a little barn or, shed that they're using for that, for us, I think it would be actual agricultural purposes.
And we do run into from time to time where we have a farm, but they're doing like car repair, and that's not deemed agriculture, so we will then, decipher whether, and again, I'm going back to zoning, and whether or not the zoning code allows, that process to happen. And it comes down to gravel roads and hard paved roads. I mean, there's a lot of other things that we get into, but in this case, it's agriculture and we stay away from it.
So, yeah, it's just a little different.
We're gaining.
Okay, so I'll put this together 2 weeks from now, we'll have it on the agenda. For this, just this portion?
This is portion.
Yes.
Yeah, then we'll go on to the right to entry protection, all that then.
So that'll be added in here, and
That's a work session in 2 weeks?
well, what do you guys want? Do you want another work session? Or do you wanna vote on it?
Would this be a resolution, or this isn't a?
This will have to be ordinance.
This is the ordinance.
This is the ordinance portion.
We're probably gonna have a work session, I would think.
One thing about work session, or public hearing,
Mhm.
is you'll have people, if they think it's gonna affect them,
Yeah,
they will show up here and you get some good information.
yeah.
November the 15th, we also have the public hearings for the airport approach.
We wouldn't wanna have that,
We want to have them at the same time.
because it's hard telling, because when we had that animal control ordinance, that was, went on several weeks. I don't know, you guys wanna reflect on this another week and then what Trent?
I just wanna end it, so I mean, if we're gonna come, you know what I mean? I don't wanna have 3
All
more,
I
so I
had
mean,
to
let's.
do, but I wanna make sure that everybody,
Right.
we've got, I wanna make it specific and measurable and compatible and achievable.
We need one more work
You know,
session then to
So,
put in play.
but I think we're on top of it.
One quick thing, I noticed you typed in the address there on Third Street, if that's gonna be relocated. I don't know if
It
there's.
might be another couple of years.
Well, is it, I mean, even.
Or a year and a half.
Is there any
1
reason to
year.
even have it, an address in there? If it's gonna change at some point?
What's your address, Sharon? We'll put that in there.
North here.
Probably wouldn't hurt anything, that was.
Your cell phone number.
Yeah.
Well, and, we just want it to be a place known, and we don't want somebody taking a letter to one of your clinics, right? So, the question, how does that look? I think this is good for now, and if we have to do a amendment to that ordinance to change the address,
That's, keep that in mind, if it's an
Your notice
obsolete
letter's gonna
address,
have
5 years from now.
Your notice letter's gonna have your information where to file as well,
yeah.
for reference, so.
Yeah, that should have your address and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, we can take
Probably
that
really
out.
don't even need to have an address in the ordinance.
I was gonna say, could we just make that the Board of Health and take out the address?
That's what I was thinking.
Because the notice is gonna have the contact information and everything else on there.
Because one of the things that we do is, we send out the letter with all the pictures, we have the ordinance, we've got the policy. We send all of that information to the individual that's getting cited.
I'll give you that.
So you got some changes to make on this. So,
Mhm.
if you're gonna make them changes, and before we put it on the agenda, I would like to go over them. So maybe we should have one more work session, a short one.
Yeah.
Dream on, Jim.
Well, you know what'll happen, Jim, is we'll finish this quick, and we'll move into
The next phase.
We'll roll in right into the next phase.
You get with Terry, we'll have another work session on this,
Okay.
after you get your stuff changed, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, that was perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey Trent, you had mentioned earlier about the nuisance officer shall, with each phone call. Is that in this? I looked, I didn't see it, or is that in the process?
No, it's in the Iowa code. It's not
Okay.
here.
Well,
Yeah, I
so,
don't know.
if
So
you.
we're supposed to be, and for the last 20 years, we're supposed to be checking out everyone, and it just hasn't been happening.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was kind of surprised when that was an eye-popping moment. Sometimes you read and you're like, double back on, holy smokes. But technically, we're supposed to go, if somebody calls in a nuisance, we're supposed to go, and so in theory, I suppose we can say we have deputies going and checking these out, I don't think we do. But maybe, I know that, when we were talking this at one point in time, Sheriff Clendon did say that he does have deputies look at things sometimes. But they're looking at it, I'm sure, with a much, much different eye. So, I think the reality is this is something we just haven't been doing, but technically, the state's telling us we're supposed to be doing it. So, the good news is we're in the process of starting to do it now, so.
I
Can't
just-
change the past.
I just wondered how they treat, because we all know that there's those neighbors and basically probably aesthetic situations that people don't like the way the neighbor's house looks, and then it's one phone call and another phone call. How do they handle that? Do you guys get that repeated calls? Do you go out each time, or is it one and done?
Generally, it's one and done.
Oh, good.
We cite it,
Yeah.
we record it, we put it in the file, we file it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. We're gonna take about
Thank you,
a
Rick.
3 to 5 minute break here, and we have a work session on county conservation on the budget.
Thank you for coming.
This is what you were talking about earlier? Yeah, 168.
for Conservation Board and the Supervisor Board for a meeting on the budget. Okay, Chris, we're gonna let you take off.
Okay, so at the beginning of the fiscal year, the board here sent a letter to supervisors saying that once we got past the end of camping season, we reconvene and talk about our budget situation once we've had a chance to see our revenue and expense numbers. So we've had a chance to do that with the cuts that we've made and the revenues we've tried to find. We're still looking at projecting about a $15,000 deficit at the end of the year in our operating budget. That includes not backfilling our naturalist position with a full-time position, and then a number of other park things that we've done, closing the Maple Loop down there, Welter Recreation Area. And
Closing what?
Maple Loop, one of the campgrounds down at Welter Recreation Area down Skunk River Road, and various things. The increase in camping fees that we did, the increase in shooting range fees, we've realized those numbers, and so that's where we're looking at ending this fiscal year currently. And so we wanted to come back and get the board's opinion here on how we should proceed forward.
Have you got any sort of a budget through now, or through, you know what I mean, a recent budget and then projections through the rest of the year?
Yes, I'm sorry, I did not bring that with me, but
Okay.
I do have that. And so basically I have a working spreadsheet that I use that I plug in projected numbers and try to see what our bottom line comes out at.
And speaking for myself, that would be great if I could look at something like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as an aside, you might not have picked the best day in the world to come down here and ask for, that was all the emails and everything. I know it said in the paper that the board of supervisors had been talking about this. We had not, you mentioned, and like I said, I assumed it was the same as the 2008 buyout, that there was some agricultural use for that, which the 2008, when did we sell those properties? 8, 10
Oh, the
years
ones
ago.
up on the bottom?
Yeah, 10
yeah.
years ago, something like that. And we just had a little auction right here in the room, and they had the people that lived next to it, that, it was the corner of their property, so they just went ahead and farmed on through that, and it worked great. And I guess that's what I envisioned. But
And I
you
think that
apparently
was,
knew it wasn't gonna go well, because like I said, you showed up with a hard hat and a chest protector so I suspect you knew what was gonna happen. Anyway,
I've
but
been in that situation before, yes.
that's not a brownie point. Conservation Board in my,
Tom,
right now.
if I may
You
add
bet.
something, just, the idea of the public input actually came from the board. We thought it would be good we directed Chris to have a public meeting to get the input from everybody when we had that meeting that Jim was in and had the feasting where we discussed in detail the use of these FEMA properties and what we were contemplating. So I don't know that it particularly was a surprise, but we asked him to have the public setting. It wasn't something, because we thought it important to get everybody's input, which obviously it was. So that was the background on that.
And I appreciate that. That's
I might
fine.
also add, Tom, that you have chided us numbers of times about acting as a business. And this was a way that we were looking at trying to be a business. And this started about 8 years ago when we were complaining about paying drainage taxes with the government taxing the government. Makes no sense, but it happens with the drainage tax.
And I think I mentioned earlier, you might not have been here, that operating something like a business does not mean generating revenue by threatening to disrupt people's lives. And that's what we're doing when you tell somebody, we're gonna move in a campground where people are gonna be there on the weekends or do this or that, or we don't know. And that isn't how you operate a business. Expenses can't exceed revenues, that sort of thing, but there's another name for that particular revenue model. But
the point is, that's a recreational area. And if somebody else moves in next door to them, or buys a property or leases a property, what's the difference?
Those properties can't be bought,
They
so
can't be
that's,
bought,
there's nothing the county can do about that.
I understand the FEMA properties, I'm just saying, in their minds, and I agree. I mean, John Archer's a good example, he's taken care of that lot next to him for 15 years, it's perfect, it's mowed, it's taken care of. But if that was not FEMA property and somebody else leased it from you, would he have a gripe?
No, but he would be able to approach me, or already have approached me and talk about buying it. But the properties we're talking about are not. This is the county doing this to them and saying, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna rent your properties to who knows what, doing anything that they can do legally there. That's.
Now, you and I both know when you put a lease together, you put stipulations in it, so that's not necessarily so.
Well, you're gonna have something temporary there. Regardless, everybody knew how this was gonna turn out. And when you mentioned it in passing, I just assumed it was agricultural use, didn't give it another thought.
So, but it was we had at least 2 board meetings plus a work session where Jim came with us and we drove and looked at every single one of those.
But
I
it's
did,
not the board of supervisors.
I did miss that meeting part of it.
The meeting afterwards, yeah, but you got the meeting
Bob
summary.
scared
there,
that damn wasp over to me and.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Part of my job
But,
description.
but what I read in the paper is you discussed it with the board of supervisors, what you were doing. And all I knew about it was you'd mentioned it, I suppose in some morning, hear from each department, because I do remember you saying you were looking at leasing out the FEMA 93 lots. And I thought, agriculture, no problem. Didn't give it another thought.
And I thought I described our line of thinking in those board summaries that I sent out, that comes directly to you guys. I mean, there's at least 2 of those.
I
Had
read those, I didn't read anything like that.
in both the September and October, August and September ones, we had, it even say we reviewed the letter that we were gonna send to the property owners.
Well, I also didn't get a copy of that letter, and I don't think Shane or,
I got a letter here, on the concerns. We got too many emails, and all that to go over, so as I stated, it's a meeting there. But Kelly Archer sent a good email out. I think there's a lot of things that there's 19 things here. I'd just like to read it to you.
Okay.
And this is stuff that she wanted to know. I'll start out. Who would police these campsites? Who would be responsible for cleanup after the campers leave? How would property taxes be paid? No tax on it. Would campers have portable potty accessibility? Where would human waste be disposed of if no potties? How would we neighbors know who is supposed to be there camping? How many campers would be allowed on one side? Would fire rings be put in for controlled fires? Once again, who would police fires and potential grass fires and timber fires? Number 9, would children under 12 have to wear life jackets if they were next to the river? Where would money come from for a camper ground? We have private roads, Edgewater Beach Road, to our homes. How would this work? We have a road fund that we keep up on our roads. With that, everyone contributes to. Would they have to pay for its use? When it floods, are they responsible for planting the grass seeds and cleaning up mud afterwards? And would noise ordinance be in effect, since they would basically be in our yards? Would generators be allowed? Would animals be allowed? Could we be given first chance to lease? Could the wooded areas behind the levee that do not flood be done first as a trial period? Would we be compensated for the upkeep on them for 29 years? Could being allowed to be the first choice lease be our compensation? would the leasers have to maintain insurance, or would Des Moines County maintain insurance? They were very good questions.
But it's all nonsense, Jim, because a lease is a lease.
They're-
Whoever leases it.
They are
takes-
not nonsense, they're asking questions. And
All
they're
right,
asking a
but I'm
good question
saying
that
a lease-
that you as a board member should be able to answer.
And I did. I did. I
Nonsense,
answered
and it's
Kelly.
not nonsense.
We heard all of that.
I heard that, and it's not nonsense.
I pulled up your two monthly reports, and on the September report, it says work session. The board toured all the FEMA buyout properties around and along Tamer Road in an effort to assess the feasibility of leasing them out. To better gauge interest and solicit public feedback, the board decided to host a public meeting about it in the next month or so. That's all it says in September. In October, it says project updates. In addition to those provided in the packet, USG will be doing some core drilling in Big Hollow next week. A draft letter to property owners along the Tamer Road corridor was presented. The letter invites them to a public meeting on October 25th regarding the possible leasing of FEMA buyout areas. Neither of those references, when I look at them, like I said, I just assumed agricultural use. Maybe I shouldn't have, but that's the only use I've seen FEMA buyout properties used for, and that was in the 2008. You could sell those. These you can't, but agricultural is allowed in both of them.
The answer to Kelly's questions is a lease, whoever the leasee is, takes care of the property.
Exactly. What
But-
have you
And
thought about?
she was told that, and let me make one thing clear. Whether we lease these things or not, I don't know. We're concerned about raising money. If we can't raise money there, we're coming back to you. You gonna give us some more money?
Is it, that's what this work session is for, right? We're talking about your budget money, really, not the property that we talked about earlier. We're supposed to be getting down to numbers?
The conversation
That
started
that
up
was the
there.
intention, sure, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, no, I just wanna get refocused. I wanna make sure that we're talking about your budget though, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, to your point, yeah, I did not specify that we were looking at doing recreational leases or campground leases or anything. That was specified in that letter that was reviewed by the board, and Jim comes to those, and so, sorry, I did not send that to the entirety of the board. I was just using Jim being our liaison to you guys. He was involved in all of those discussions, and then we summarized them in those reports that come out after the board meeting. So I thought that communication was sufficient. If it wasn't, I apologize for that, I'm sorry. I didn't realize.
Well, and let me make just a thought here. And you can get us that information. We talked about the budget information.
Sure.
Email it to all of it. I think everybody's feelings are a little tender this morning after the first meeting. I would propose, otherwise we can go back and forth the things we always argue about. That's not going anywhere. Send us your numbers. We can look at them, set up another work session, or if you want to have a meeting with a concert, something like that, but give us some numbers, because if we're going to talk about budgets, we aren't going to make any headway with the same subjects we've already been on. I would like to see the numbers. And like I said, everybody's feelings are a little tender this morning. I don't see any particular good happening about probing those feelings any deeper at the moment.
Let me add a postscript if I could. The board is not a passive board. We bought into this. We urged Chris to go ahead and open up lines of communication with property owners up there. We take responsibility for it, not Chris. So.
And Julie mentioned, and I appreciate that. I understand that, and I appreciate it. When you send out a letter to property owners, it would be great if you'd copy the board on something like that, just so because quite often, when the public has any questions, they call a board member, one of the Board of Supervisors members. So anytime you do that in the future, that would be great.
And maybe just to further the budget discussion, I know, Chris threw out the number of 15,000, but I personally think that number is probably closer to 40, because that is 15,000, taking into account the services that we've terminated, the half employment, the, not as many seasonal people. That is a sub-optimized department. And when you sub-optimize departments long enough, you set them up for failure. So, and this is, I'm throwing a number out, this may not be what comes to mind as he generates these numbers, but 40,000 is a better number to make us wholly functioning. And that still would account for closing down Maple Loop, would stay closed, and some things that won't come back. Some things that have frankly come and made some improvements, like turning the park up at Mediapolis into a pollinator garden. In terms of what our mission is, that's a great idea. So, some good things have come, but when you sub-optimize, you're asking for first safety issues, because you're not able to put as much rock on the roads, you're not able to keep the trails as well, you're opening yourself up to some things. If you want a fully functioning department, and I've kind of made it a mission to get around all 99 counties. I haven't quite made it, but I've looked at a lot of the conservation services in these departments, like Dickinson County, not the big ones, because they all got money, but just the ones of comparable or smaller size. And there's a lot of good services out there, and I know we want Des Moines County Conservation to be premier. So I think the number's closer to 40, but he can confirm.
Is Dickinson County, is that Spirit Lake?
I believe so.
Okay,
yeah.
that's also the richest county.
Oh,
in
yeah,
Iowa
I know.
By
but
property value per capita, that is way, way, way beyond any other county, and multiples of the property valuation per capita in Des Moines County.
But there's been others, like the one where the Rockford fossils are. I can't think of the county now, but it's a poorer county. But I'm just saying, we want to be premier. That's our mission as a board. So.
And I appreciate it, myself, we have different visions, responsibility, and we have similar things, and we've got lots of departments. And we've got some constraints, some of them state imposed, some of them self-imposed, but the general basic levy is state imposed. So anyway, I'm not trying to belittle, I truly am not what you're looking at. I'm just saying, we have different things we look at. So, and I respect your vision.
I just want to say we can't really, until we got some numbers, that's what we do need, until we got the paperwork to see what.
The bottom line number is 15,000. I mean, so last year when we made this change to the budget, and all of our operations were gonna operate out of general basic, that was the discussion, was that the discussion was simply going to be on bottom line. We get a flat amount from the tax base, that's what it is. So that flat amount of 600,000 that we got this year results in us having a $15,000 deficit in our budget at the level of operations that we've got.
That's all I want to see. I just want a copy of that, so I can
Send that to the board if you would, we appreciate it.
You want the full budget spreadsheet, so to every line
I
item?
don't know what those guys want, that suits me, but you can give me a short version, whatever you want.
Where's your, Chris, right now, where's the big hall camping fee at? Last meeting, I've got numbers from the last meeting.
Be a touch higher than from the last meeting, because we're not seeing a whole lot of revenue right now.
Do you have any idea how much it was through October?
I mean, I could look it up, fire my computer and get you the number right now, or, I mean, if I'm sending you the whole spreadsheet, you'll have the whole numbers as of when we meet next.
Yeah, do that.
I'll wait till I get the others.
Okay.
well, we have a board meeting tomorrow night. Please provide that particular number to you too.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we meet, when do you want to meet again? for a follow-up work session.
What works? What works for you guys? You good?
Next week's election day.
You decide?
Next
I
week
said,
is election.
What day works for you guys?
Next week's
week or the
election.
week after?
The week after election.
15th?
Week after is our budget meeting.
Oh, yeah, the 15th is,
15.
so we shouldn't have a work session on the nuisance ordinance on November the 15th either.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's the,
That's
big,
the- that's
yes,
the-
that's
yeah.
the county budget meeting, yeah.
Cheryl made Cheryl mad at us.
Recording
Can
next.
you guys come to our board meeting tomorrow?
Next, I can't, but next week would work for me. I don't think we have any work sessions.
What time is your board meeting?
Next.
We've got a public hearing.
Oh, on the 8th?
I think we have a public hearing.
Yeah, yeah, there's that. I don't think there's any work sessions yet, so we just have some public hearings during
It's
the,
the Stars Cave tomorrow.
during the board meeting.
Still gonna be at Starter Cave
Tomorrow, yes.
tomorrow?
So I expect some of the folks that were here today are gonna be
What's
there.
that?
Because I suspect some of the folks that were here today are gonna be there.
Oh,
So what, do you want to have the next work session next week?
I suppose we could.
I can't make it tomorrow. I can't make it tomorrow.
Can't make it tomorrow.
So next week?
What's that?
So next week?
Work session for next week? That's good for me.
I'm out.
Yeah, you're-
But,
I'm always been.
Tom won't be able to make the meeting tomorrow night. I don't know about Shane.
Well, I mean,
You won't be able to Wednesday night, you've got your,
oh, today's Tuesday.
yeah.
Not till 6. I could probably catch a piece of it. Where are you guys, is it up at?
Starter Cave.
Be at Starks Cave.
It'll be at
Oh, yeah,
Starter
it's in
Cave.
town.
But,
could catch a
I mean,
piece of it.
it's a non-issue till we can talk with all three of you.
But next
Okay,
week,
so
that gives you
next week is
about a
fine.
week before the budget kickoff.
Just at least give me that information so I can see your budget, and that way.
And you'll get an email to us later today or tomorrow for this?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got time to process it, yeah.
Hey, and I just wanna say this too, to you guys, I know emotions and whatnot, but, I personally do appreciate you guys trying to think outside the box and flip over stones and whatnot. Not everything's gonna strike oil, but, I do, I appreciate the fact that you guys are looking at ways to make money. And it doesn't seem like you're very happy today, but I still appreciate the fact that you guys are trying to try to make some money to help Chris out, help out conservation, so I just wanna make that, just wanna say that.
I really don't care about the FEMA properties. It was just a thing for us to look at. It's kind of been a stickler on my side because we're paying taxes on it, we get no money for it. So that's not an issue with me. The issue really with me is that you all put your shortfall on this department and no other department, and I don't think that's fair.
What are you
State
talking
it
about that?
straight out.
What are you talking about that?
That's what I'm unhappy about.
Just out of curiosity.
You're the only department that we're letting keep general basic off of the campgrounds, big hollow out there, shooting range and that all goes into your coffer. We don't let the auditors, the sheriff department, recorders, or anybody keep the money that they take in, that all goes into general basic. So you wanna talk about shortfall, we'll cross that bridge later.
I'm just talking about fairness more than anything else. 13 departments, we're the only one that you cut short. And quite frankly, for 3 years, we haven't had any equipment budget for capital equipment, and we're breaking down. Our equipment is going to hell in a handbasket.
On the comments that you've gotten from the public, have you gotten any in support of leasing some of these FEMA buyout areas?
On what?
Have you gotten any in support of leasing some of these buyout areas? Because there's also that side that, it's a much smaller, less mobile side.
in support of leasing the property?
Yes. So we've had,
Unless something just came in this
We don't
morning.
have any less of them come in this morning.
because we've had several people over the years come up to us and ask
I,
either to purchase them or how to have access to these. And we've had some adjacent owners, even at this meeting, we had an adjacent owner come up and said they'd be interested in leasing a site next to them for use by their family or something, so it isn't.
and I don't think that's a problem if the people wanted to do it. You can't sell them, as you know.
Right.
And I don't see anything we've heard, or that I've gotten positive. And, it'd have to be for like cultural use or something like that. But if you just put it up for bid, like I said, and all of a sudden you're gonna rent it out to somebody they don't know, you know, that for a year or 2 years, and what are they gonna do? They certainly aren't gonna take care of the property like the people that live next door to it that have been mowing it or keeping the weeds down or something like that.
I don't know that that's entirely true though.
Well, that would certainly be the impression. Nobody wants somebody moving in next to them that's only gonna be there on weekends, and, you know, they're there to, party or whatever. That's, nobody wants to live next door to an event center.
And I get that, and
But if you,
that's what
if
everybody
you were
is.
leasing it to individuals, you made it, leasing to individuals, if you wanna, use it and have, you know, guests or, I don't know, but that would be different if it was the same people, but if you just do that, then that would be part of the, discussion if you were gonna have with them.
But Tom, they have every right to be the lease or they can lease the property. If we go on a sealed bid basis, John Archer can bid on that piece of ground.
Yeah, but when we auctioned those off, we auctioned them off to the adjacent landowners.
Now, you're talking about something different than I'm talking.
Leasing them, anyway, so that's,
John Archer could lease that piece of ground that he's.
as long as he bids higher than somebody else.
Or he may lose it.
Or he
to a
may
higher
lose it,
bidder.
or he may lose it, and you don't know what's coming in.
But
I just said, you're putting, you're placing, you're making those people uneasy. You're putting them in a bind. There's nothing business-like about saying, okay, we need money, you better outbid everybody else to lease this property, or who knows who'll be there next to you. I was in business a long time, that is not how you do business.
Well,
I've been in
it-
business a long time myself. and
You know, I
have
think there are some other parallels recently in the area that have been saying, you know, I live in Middletown, and there's a parade ground in Middletown. And the proposal was on the books to sell the part of that parade ground. And it's been out there forever, and nobody who lives there wants it to happen, except for some people on the city council. And so we got a petition, and it was signed and sent to Middletown, and they put, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was a 5-year moratorium on it. That's part of public input is, here's an idea, is it good, bad, or indifferent? I don't think that's abusive, I think that's just, you know, when they brought it up, we said, oh, we didn't feel threatened by that proposal. It was a proposal to do something with a piece of ground. I think the idea of classifying it as doing something to somebody seems a little interesting.
These people did
So
feel
there's-
threatened.
Well, I was emotional. I don't want a house built right across me, but I certainly didn't feel threatened.
Okay, well, these people did, all I had to do was read the newspaper article, read the emails we got.
Which is why we had a
They were
public-
nervous.
We heard all of it, you know.
Well, anyway, so I'm saying these people did feel
We
threatened.
heard it all.
Yep.
So one lady stood up and says, well, you need to raise money, we'll have a bake sale for you.
No, and I appreciate that, and I thanked them this morning, for coming and supporting conservation and coming and offering input. And it's,
That's part of public discourse.
and we talk past each other. I know you're tired of hearing from me, but I've gone to your meetings, and I talk, you know. and I say what I want, and you say, nope, we're not gonna do that. You say this is what you want.
Well, you know, you brought up the fact that all you have to give us is an office.
That's true.
That's what it says. I've read 350 100 times. But that's minimal. And I don't think any other county really looks at it that way. This is a benefit for the people of the county. I mean, I feel like my 10 years has made Des Moines County a little bit better place to live because we've developed some recreational facilities. We've had some events for them. We have an ag person that helps the farmers. You know, so I think conservation is a very good thing. I just hate to see us be shortchanged.
And I agree with you, I think it's a good thing. And yeah, all we have to provide is office space. Des Moines County's never done that. I believe it's 22 cents of the equivalent of 22 cents of the county levy. If that has to go to conservation to be eligible for the REAP program, to make sure you'd be eligible for grants and the REAP program. You get, I think that adds up to about, off the top of my head, maybe $400,000, maybe a little less. So anyway, we're not saying we don't fund you. I'm just saying, we've never said that's all we have to do. I told those people that we have a way of looking at things too. We have a lot of things we have to fund. The state says you will provide a sheriff's office. You will provide a county attorney's office. You will provide an auditor. That's why when we talk about it, all comes out of the same levy, that general basic. So we're not. I'm just saying that it's a little different. It isn't. If we didn't value conservation, we wouldn't have done all the things we've done. Like Jim said, you're the only department that gets to keep its general basic revenue. And a lot of other departments have asked.
How many years has that been, that we've been able to do that?
What you've been collecting a big hollow revenue for what? 6, 7 years? Well, I don't know, for it's been a while. I remember I was on the board that approved that.
I think it's 2014, I want to say.
Might have been. Anyway, it's been, so if it's 2014, that's 8 years. So yeah, that and in this last budget, we gave you the last fourth pumping station, whatever it was, but you get to keep all your general fund revenue. And other departments, you're not the first that have come in and asked for that.
Well, you know, our answer is that we're gonna have to shut down some things.
Well,
That's our answer.
That's fine. Send us that budget. You know, we're all, well, those two are fair. Who knows about me? But we'll be happy to look at it and sit down and have a work session next Tuesday when we've got some numbers in front of it and see where we go from here.
In 2014, could you put boats in there? Could you put boats in there? Did you have a boat ramp in 2014?
A big hollow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lake was built in 08.
Okay, 2014, I asked you about handicap going down to the beach because I had several handicapped people asking about it. When we loaned you the $250,000, this here should take care of the handicap. We still don't have that down to the beach. We got a new boat ramp, you know, and that's part of running the business. Your priorities are screwed up there a little bit. We still don't have a way to get a handicapped person down to that beach in a wheelchair. Or crutches.
We finally have the grant funding to do that this coming year.
I won't believe it until I see it.
The money that built the beach, built that new boat ramp, different. Could have been used for that. The $250,000 that you loaned us was to give us a 2-year jump start on building the campground, for which we had grants and loans and donations to
build that with that was specific to that. And so, yes, we are, and hence this master plan has a lot of accessibility improvements on it, but, you know, putting boat ramp or putting sidewalks around the beach isn't going to generate revenue. And so, you know, there's an upfront cost to developing some of this stuff, but you don't see an ROI on a lot of park type improvements. And so we focused on building that stuff, which A, reaches the most number of people, or B, generates the most revenue, hence the campground development. And so that's what we've tried to do over the years. So we're finally getting there to.
And on the boat ramp, we had a lot of complaints and we had a couple accidents because it was so damn steep. And so we were answering what the public wanted by improving that
Did you
boat
send out
ramp.
a survey on that, boat ramp or handicap?
Yep.
Done a lot of public survey.
I never seen that, I'd like to see that.
Came up a lot, yes.
I don't think the survey specifically pitted boat ramp versus handicap, but that's not how we use survey, but it was just a general survey.
But I think we talked about how nice the park is and that, we're accessible to everybody. All it takes is just one little piece of cement down there, you know? Just a little curved sidewalk.
And that's what we're trying to do under this new master plan, is increase that accessibility on a lot of that stuff. But we've tried to meet the biggest demand earliest, and that which generates the most revenue earliest. That's why we've done what we've done in the order that we've done it. And then along the way, using that to cover more and more operations. So I'll get you some numbers and some explanations, and we'll talk again next week.
Okay, thank you. Guess we're through for today.
I hope everybody's afternoon went better than the morning, goes better than the morning.
We're all good on that.
Are all three of you on the conservation board?
Actually, good.
Well,